Welcome to part 2 of Let's Waffle, our special state game edition. John, state footy's back. It's at Bendigo Bank Stadium this week down in Mandurah. I wonder how the stadium's going to cope with the thousands of people that'll be flocking to that game down in Mandurah.
It's in magnificent shape. I'll tell you something, Ross, I love state footy. I loved it from the time I was a kid and went and saw that first State of Origin game, and I think there is nothing more special than a WA Queensland blockbuster.
So what you're suggesting is this game should actually be moved to a Tuesday afternoon so we can all wag school and work and pop along and watch WA Queensland?
Yeah, played at Subiaco Oval. I think that's the perfect place for it. Maybe State of Origin. Queensland might have a couple of good players. I think Rewald would be a fair pickup, wouldn't he?
John, we've forgotten to tell the punters where we are today too. We do travel around with our usual backdrop to different venues in the WAFL arena, and since the state game's at the Bendigo Bank Stadium, we should sort of tell people where we are today to celebrate the occasion.
Well, where are we?
We're actually in the Wayne Delmenico Demountable.
Are we?
Yeah,
well, I think they've removed that from Peel, from down at Rushton Park.
I don't know what a South Fremantle player has got to do with a game at Rushton Park or the new Bendigo Bank Stadium, but yeah, the Wayne Delmenico Demountable, good defender.
Yes, and premiership player at South. And I think his son was a premiership player at South, so that's not going too badly for the Delmenicos. But yes, no Demountables left at Bendigo Bank. They've been moved on and have been replaced with the Taj Mahal. So can't wait for that very big match, Ross.
Do you have to take the Ugg boots off before you go into the stadium?
No, don't you start about that, because they are very fine and very very sophisticated, cosmopolitan people down there. You know what they've done at Peel? It's been a great move. They've stopped cars going onto the banks and honking when there's goals kicked. So you can see Milan, Venice, New York.
And then to stop it at the Bondi Valley as well. They're doing it up at Steel Blue, I notice from time to time. John, state game, apart from the fact that most people in the WAFL wouldn't have a clue that this game is going on, injuries are affecting WA's preparation. Yeah, well,
unfortunately, the sole Peel player, Chris Thornton's fallen over too, so it looks like he's going to miss the game. It's a reasonable WA squad. And I mean, they've got a very strong midfield, and Nash Hanson's been pretty good nick. He'll be the big power forward. They'll be far too strong for Queensland, you think. WA's played Queensland 7 times. Bonnie Campbell kicked 23 goals against them in one state game.
24, wasn't it?
Yeah, so he enjoyed it, and we played in Townsville 3 years ago at a stadium not dissimilar to Bendigo Bank, and that was a bit of a blueprint for the Tony Island Stadium up there in Townsville. A bit of a blueprint for some of what the clubs are doing and what Peel have done. I think WA will be far too strong for Queensland.
Why are we playing this game at Bendigo Bank Stadium, John?
I think it's part of the commitment or the support for the federal and state funding that's gone into building the newest facility in the WAFL, I guess.
Well, what's it do when we get 1,500 people to the stadium? Well, it's highly unlikely WAFL people in the city are going to drive down now. I know Peel are in the competition and they should have as much respect as the other clubs, but let's face it, people do not travel to their ground. Why are they going to go down and watch the stadium?
Well, to take the counter view, we played Victoria last year, coming off a good win the season before. The 2 best leagues in the comp playing at Leederville Oval last year, and about 2,000 people turned up. So clearly people don't vote with their feet as far as WAFL or state league interstate competitions go.
This game should be played in Kalgoorlie Boulder. That's my view. In 1999 we played a state game against Tasmania there. We had 7,500 people. It was a fantastic exercise. The whole town would get behind that idea, work with the local football teams to do a few things during the week. That would be my idea. Take it right out of town.
Yeah, probably a bit late to change the venue now, but
I think Cal have got a few things.
Well, I mean, they're probably saying the same thing. Taking it to a regional centre, and it's the same with Peel. Look, it's a good showcase for a ground that's now just about the best in the WAFL, I suppose. I don't disagree with it. I mean, yes, if you live up in Perth, it takes you an hour to get down there, but there's a lot of people down sort of in the southern corridor who might turn up and think that here's a good opportunity to go and see this game. Let's hope it's cheap to get in, rather than the ridiculous $15 to go and watch WAFL matches now, which is one of the more ridiculous decisions that WAFL's made in recent times.
Well, it was particularly good that they didn't tell anyone that they were putting up the price.
Almost as ridiculous as the umpires wearing purple in the East Perth game on Saturday. Now that was for a good cause, breast cancer, so no one's denying that it's a good cause. But when you've got one team wearing blue and black and the umpires wearing purple and black, I mean, that's a decision made by a bloke who's hit the ground harder than Graham Pollack did.
I'm not too sure about causes in the WAFL. I think there's some causes that are taken up that actually sometimes affect the integrity of the competition. But moving right along, what are the Queenslanders going to do? They're able to pick from just about everywhere. The Northern Territory, Queensland, and one of the interesting things is trying to figure out what their team is going to be made up of, because they're bringing in parties from everywhere.
Yeah, well, their squad's still, I think, above 30.
34, yeah.
So, I mean, I presume that sometime this week they'll be trimmed, because they'll be travelling on Friday. Yeah, some from the Northern Territory. Andrew McLeod's not playing. That's a bit unfortunate, but Ross Tungatullam is, who played at South last year. Robert Copeland's probably their biggest name. Played in a couple of Brisbane Lions premierships, so he's a fair player, and he's been going around for up in the QAFL, or the NEAFL as it is now. Josh Pullman's in the squad too. Played at Swans last year, and he kicked 7 goals down at Peel. So maybe he's a bloke with some local knowledge who might stir it up for the Black Ducks a little bit. Yeah, we're still waiting to see the Queensland side. You wouldn't have thought that they're going to challenge them all that much, but you know, good luck. Another game of footy. Let's hope that we get a reasonable crowd there.
No Eagles and Dockers in the WA state squad.
Lewis Broom.
Well, no, the senior listed players obviously ineligible to play. What's going to happen when AFL teams finally get their way, John? They might have lost the battle to get reserves teams into the WAFL on this occasion, but as we said earlier, the war is far from over. Yeah,
it's funny, in 1988 the Eagles said they needed a reserves team to be competitive. It fell over because it was going to cost them $500,000 a year to field a reserves team. They said they could not compete with the rest of the competition if they didn't have a reserves team. They won 3 of the next 5 premierships, so that was proved to be complete baloney.
3 grand finals.
That's 3 or 3. Played in 3 and won 2, obviously. They're saying exactly the same thing at the moment. Competitive disadvantage is the mantra that they keep repeating. Both of them are going pretty well. I think it's just a complete furphy. I think their system supports them at the moment. Their players get prepared pretty well. 10 teams had reserves in the AFL 10 years ago, and they've given them away. So suddenly the flavour of the month is that they come back in.
I was in Melbourne last week, and I was talking to some Western Bulldogs and Richmond officials who clearly pointed out the fact that you cannot compare the VFL competition to the WAFL competition. The VFL clubs have no involvement in junior development. They're not responsible for raising the talent that the WAFL clubs are. And I think that was lost in a lot of the argument that the WAFL clubs are not just WAFL teams. They're involved in the production of football talent all the way down to Auskick, and that's certainly not the case in the VFL. So we're really not comparing apples with apples. South Australia and WA don't have that policy, and it's interesting that they are the strongest football states outside of Victoria.
Yeah, so that's just a reflection of where we're going, and if it's not broken, don't try to fix it.
What about host clubs? Is the host
alignments rather than host clubs probably. Look, that's a possibility. I mean, you can look from a football point of view. You can understand a coach and a club wanting to keep their players in the same stream all the way through, though.
Fremantle are going to have 3 players this week.
Well, and I think that hurt them. The timing of this proposal hurt them because they had a period when they're having 4 or 5 or 6 players in the WAFL. Are you going to change the system, a total state system, so that Casey Sibasato can play in one team rather than another? Is that what your development's about? Well, of course not. So their timing was not great. They're creating something that probably doesn't really need to be there. I mean, the West Coast are going all right. Fremantle are going all right. Both won last weekend with their players coming out of the WAFL and being prepared. Clayton Hinkley went back. Michael Barlow's played well in the WAFL. He'll go back to Freo this week, or in the short period. Eric McKenzie went back to Claremont and played well. He's sort of preparing properly. It's a dead duck today. Whether or not, I'm sure that AFL clubs will reconsider, but you know, they've spent a lot of work, a lot of money in a proposal that was sold very poorly.
It was very light, the proposal, though, wasn't it? There was too much. There was too much. Too much could have been.
It was a very lightweight proposal. I'm surprised. You know, when they said they'd spent hundreds and hundreds of hours preparation, you expected a wow factor that was just lacking. One thing that I found really surprising, that they presented their proposal about 2 weeks ago. Not one phone call or contact with the WAFL club since then to lobby to get it up. So it was almost like we'll present it, you'll salute and fall into line and give us it.
Or was this a shot across the bow? Was this an ambit claim with something stored up, or the real reason of how they're going to get this concept
well, there's no AFL National Reserves competition.
But is it to try and change the distribution of monies to the WA Football Commission as well, and saying, well, we're not getting the support here? There's been around AFL too long not to suggest or not to think that there's something else that they've got up their sleeve, or there's something else to this. This is not the end game.
Well, you'd think not. I mean, they said at the time they didn't have a plan B when they presented their case.
They had C, D and E.
Yeah. I wonder. I wonder that now. I mean, the
commission.
Is there
going to be talk about their licence now that we're going to try and break away from the WA football system.
To do what though?
Well, I thought the strongest thing was the WA Football Commission actually came out and made the decision. It didn't have to go to a vote, and I thought for once it was actually showed the WA Football Commission are in charge of WA football, and that they deemed that the bid was far inferior.
Well, they read the tea leaves pretty well, didn't they? They knew that it wasn't going to get up, so
save a bit of face.
Well, and also having a vote, putting a proposal up and then having a vote which then gets knocked down
creates the division. Whereas at the moment you can open up the dialogue.
Yeah. So look, I think Frank Cooper, the chairman's played this pretty smart, and they've had a good result at the moment. We'll see what the counter proposal is. But as I said, the local two AFL clubs are travelling along pretty well. Historically, they've tried to do this in the past, saying that they would be disadvantaged if they didn't do it. It didn't get up, and they clearly weren't disadvantaged. I think it's a furphy. I think they should be worried about doing more important things like growing the game and helping the WAFL is the development leg, I guess, of WA football. How can that be benefited so that clubs throughout the state can do more developing, throwing up talent, identifying talent, putting it into the funnel, I suppose, to go to the highest level. Bigger issues perhaps than what this one has been.
Only the one game on, we mentioned it earlier, WA versus Queensland, Bendigo Bank Stadium, 2:15 on Saturday. Peel had the good old-fashioned scoreboard, John. We actually put the numbers up on the board, so we should be able to go to a game of football and know what the scores are, unlike Medibank Stadium 2 weeks ago, which was one of the biggest disgraces of the WAFL this year.
Well, I was at a game not that long ago, though, at Bendigo Bank, and there's 6 items of information. There's goals, behinds and points for 2 teams, so that's 6 items. 4 of the 6 were wrong, so it's not foolproof.
Well,
it might be childproof, but it's not foolproof.
A lot of people have gone into bat for the WAFL over the last month, and what I've seen at some grounds, having set out in the outer at a few over the last couple of weeks, just not up to standard WAFL clubs, and it's really time you lift your finger out. If the people are supporting you, well, it's really time you supported it yourself. So, John, you're going with WA for the state game?
Yeah, they'll win 8 on the trot, Ross, going back 100 years.
Yeah, can't pick the Maroons, unfortunately. So let's waffle for the special state edition. We'll be back next week looking at round 15 action, actually. Round 14 action we're up to, John. More than halfway through the season. And just before you go, John, is the top 4 settled? That was the one question I wanted to ask you before.
No, I think one team can force their way in. My money, if it's going to be anyone, it's Swan Districts. I don't think anyone else can perhaps do it. Subi have shown some reasonable signs. East Perth struggling, Peel too far back, Perth not good enough, but I think we might see the top 4 the way it is. Claremont and West Perth in the second semi, South and East Freo in a derby first semi, and the rest making up the numbers.
Well, that's Let's Waffle State Edition. Remember to stay with thewest.com.au for all your news on the state game and the waffle, and we'll see you next week.